He said, I would say that you're just the opposite of crazy, and that multiple personality disorder is actually a brilliant adaptation to the things that happened to you in childhood. So for me, the way I think about DID is it is a brilliant adaptation. People think this is weird when I say it, but I think if you're lucky as a child under those circumstances and have the ability to dissociate, it's a lifesaver.
Hello, Lane.
Hi, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. I got some new glasses.
Oh my gosh, they're fabulous.
Yeah, if you are watching on YouTube, you get to see them. If you're watching anywhere else, sorry, you can only hear with your ears and not see with your eyes, but new glasses abound. So we have a very interesting episode today, but before I get to that, I just realized it's probably a good idea for me to continue to remind you how to support the podcast. And I always forget to do that. And as a podcast, like I am an avid podcast listener, and now I'm like a YouTube watcher. And so I'm like, oh, I guess people say this all the time. It's fine. So I'm going to allow myself to do this now. So if you are a listener or watcher and you want to support the show, here's a couple ways you can do that. Rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Thank you. You can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. If you want to watch and see my new glasses, the handle is at Head Heart Biz Therapy. You can also follow on social media at Head Heart Biz Therapy on all the platforms except for X, because who cares about Elon Musk. You can hire me for speaking gigs. I speak on all sorts of topics from shame to power and evolving the field of psychotherapy. And lastly, you can hire me as a consultant for your group practice. So if you are a group practice owner who is looking to embody your values or transform your leadership, I'm your gal. Come on over this way. So that's how you can support the podcast. But Lane, we had a very cool episode with Sally Maslansky, and I want to know what your thoughts were.
Yeah, it was definitely a fantastic interview. It was very emotional for me as a listener and
Was
also
it?
for you. Yeah, I had goosebumps like the whole time. I think, yeah, Sally shares her story with DID and
Dissociative identity disorder, for anyone who does
that's
not
right.
know.
Yeah, and I think still to this day, there's so much stigma around it. And I was just thinking, thank God that she found her therapist, Dr. Dan Siegel, when she did, because I just feel that in the wrong hands, a lot more trauma and pain could have been sustained by Sally. And instead, she was able to connect and integrate parts of herself that maybe she otherwise wouldn't have been able to in the wrong hands. So it's just such a beautiful story, and I think really showcases the power of connection in therapy and how therapy done well can be truly life-changing.
Yeah. And when I listen back to these things, so I do them, I have an experience of them, and I like kind of encode it in my mind in a certain way. And then when I listen back, I sometimes hear different things. And I actually have a little bit of regret in this one
Mm.
because, like what you just named about the power of the therapeutic relationship, I was so I was so in my own experience for this interview that I felt like I wasn't tracking Sally as much as I
Mm.
would have wanted to, and really to like lean into just how beautiful that relationship is and that trust. And it's funny, I was actually talking about this phenomenon with a friend of mine recently who she's going through something like really, really awful. And she has a couples therapist and she has an individual therapist. And when she shared this awful thing, both the therapists sort of got hijacked in their own experiences around this
Mhm.
and weren't able to attend to her. And I was telling her, like, oh, yeah, I really relate to that because every time I tell people my parents died, I have to wait for them to have feelings. And it's like a similar phenomenon. And as I was listening back, I was sort of having that regret of, oh my God, I was so caught up in my own experience that I wasn't really able to meet Sally exactly. And I imagine that if Sally felt that way, she has forgiven me, hopefully. But I guess I just wanted to note that, and how aware as I was listening back, like what ended up happening for me is similar to what happened in the episode with Nicoletta Heidegger when I
Mhm.
got triggered. I think and this speaks to the, like, again, like even the truth of my own experiences of being sexually abused, that I can get triggered out of nowhere. And so when that happens, I do get kind of hijacked and like more self focused. And I guess we should also let listeners know before you get into this, we do talk pretty, I mean, not super explicitly, but we do talk about sexual abuse, child abuse, those sorts of things. So if you are not up for that and not up for getting triggered today, like I did, even when I know it's coming, like I knew exactly what she was going to talk about, but I got triggered anyway because that's how our systems just work. So yeah.
Mhm.
Any other follow up thoughts on that?
Well, I think that also the experience of maybe being blindsided or like unexpectedly emotional is also very, human. And I mean, I think the listeners might feel that way too, So don't beat yourself up too bad because it was definitely a very emotional conversation, I think, on both ends, and just it's sensitive subject matter. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not beating myself up, but I guess I'm just noting the process.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because I don't hear a lot of therapists talk enough about when they get triggered in a clinical setting, and this is obviously not a clinical setting, so it's a very different situation, but I think it's important to call attention to, and I think I mentioned this in the episode with Sally, I allow myself to share that vulnerable response because I think it happens so often for other people, and
Sure.
they are going to shame themselves more, and so that's sort of why I draw attention to it and why I keep these, like, ultra vulnerable moments in the podcast.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, let me introduce you to Sally. So, she is a licensed psychotherapist, speaker, consultant, and author of a brilliant adaptation, How Dissociative Identity and the Therapeutic Bond Saved Me. Her work centers on the power of relationship, the complexity of the mind, and the possibility of healing, even in the aftermath of profound childhood trauma. Please enjoy this conversation with Sally Maslansky. Sally Maslansky, welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. We only got to talk super briefly
Yes.
at the Psychotherapy Networker conference a couple weeks ago, and I'm just so excited to hear more.
Oh, well.
Everything about you.
Oh, well, I'm happy that you've given me the chance to do that. Thanks.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So tell people like what it is that you're doing in the world
Yeah.
these days.
Sure. So I'm a psychotherapist, a marriage and family therapist. I live and work in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And at the moment, I mean, I still see clients full time, but I'm doing a lot of work promoting and getting the word out about my book, which was published the beginning of January. And my book is,
Congrats.
thank you, thanks. And my book is called A Brilliant Adaptation: How Dissociative Identity Disorder and and the Power of the Therapeutic Bond Saved Me.
Mm.
So that's kind of what I'm doing these days. Yeah.
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 And I really love to hear it's kind of like your superhero origin story. What's your therapist origin story?
Yeah, so it's very entwined with my book. So in 1991, when I was 37 and I had just adopted my son, my husband and I
Mm.
adopted our son. Soon after we got back, I really felt, well, first we took him to be evaluated at UCLA, and the director of the clinic was a very young Dan Siegel. And it was a wonderful experience. And Sam was 16 months old, and there was a lot of concern that maybe there was very deep developmental issues because of
Mm.
his time in a Romanian orphanage.
Mm.
And Dan was so positive, and Sam did great. And I just remember thinking at the time, if I ever needed a therapist for myself, I wasn't a therapist then, that I would call him. And about a year later, I did,
Mm.
because I was feeling some extreme feelings of terror just in general, and also started to be afraid that maybe there was something wrong with my son, which there
Mm.
was not. And I went to see him, and what unfolded over 10 years was him diagnosing me very early with what was still called multiple personality disorder back then, and now, of course, dissociative identity disorder. Within 7 years, as we were wrapping up the dissociative identity work, I decided I wanted to go back to school and get a master's and be a therapist. I was very, very inspired by the work he and I did together and just everything now I knew about early childhood development. And I had this young son. So I went back to get my master's. But the real part of the story, I think, is that because I was so fortunate to have had Dan as my therapist, and he was so knowledgeable, even when I met him at 34, he seemed to know so much about how the mind and the brain and relationships intertwine in attachment. And he was such a positive experience with total hope always for complete healing. And there was just never
Mm,
any doubt. It was such a, I mean, it sounds strange to say, but it was such a positive experience, even though it was extraordinarily painful.
mm,
And what I started to notice as I was getting my master's was, although I really enjoyed my master's program, they were talking about mental unhealth, not about mental health.
oh, yeah.
And then my therapy was all about mental health. And also, of course, no one there, many of my teachers didn't, well, they certainly didn't understand DID, and many of them didn't acknowledge that it existed. So as a therapist, my goal has been to focus on mental health, not mental unhealth. And the reason I wrote my book was when I started to really understand how deeply misunderstood DID in particular was. And people, when they found out my connection with Dan all these years later, and he's so prominent and renowned,
Hmm.
they wanted to know what he did that was so healing. And I
Yeah.
wrote this book to show that what he did. And so the book, it's a memoir, and it truly
Yeah.
is. It starts, well, pretty much the entire book is in his office or when we're in therapy. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. I can't wait to read it.
I can't wait for you to too. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you want to unpack a little bit about dissociative identity disorder? Because it's funny, yesterday, one of my consulting clients was presenting, and one of her specialties is DID, and she was
Okay.
showing me her slides, and I was like, I don't know any of this shit. I was never trained on this. So
No, still
unpack
that,
it for us a little
sure.
bit.
And one of the things that I feel like extremely fortunate for was the way Dan conceptualized DID and understood it. It was not an enigma to him. It was not new. He'd had clients before that had had it. And the way he approached it, well, that's where the title comes from. So when I first started seeing him, the first thing I asked him, like that first session, was, am I crazy? I felt like I was going crazy.
Mm,
And he said, you're not crazy. And every time I would feel like I was crazy, he would remind me that I'm not. And
mm,
then a few months in, when he said, I think I can tell you now what I think's going on with you. And I said, what? And back then it was still called multiple personality disorder. And he said, I think you have multiple personality disorder. And I was like, so I am crazy. And he said,
oh,
and I know it was a shock, right?
wow.
And of course, all I knew about multiple personality disorder was from the movie Sybil, because this was in
Yes.
the early 90s. That I don't even think they'd had any of the big horror ones yet about DID.
Mm,
And that didn't resonate with me at all. And he said, no, Sally, you are not crazy. He said, I would say that you're just the opposite of crazy, and that multiple personality disorder is actually a brilliant adaptation to the things that happened to you in childhood. So for me, the way I think about DID is it is a brilliant adaptation. People think this is weird when I say it, but I think if you're lucky as a child under those circumstances and have the ability to
mm,
dissociate, it's a lifesaver. And so
mm,
how I think about it is, I don't care what you call them, the parts, alters, self states, it's all similar to me. But the difference between the way Dan treated me, worked with me, and the way I see a lot of other, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, but for me, Dan conceptualized my states, my alters, as verbs, not nouns, right?
oh, wow.
States of mind. They're fluid,
Mm.
not fixed entities. And that's
Oh,
how it worked
wow.
for me. And I had lots and lots and lots of states of mind.
Mm,
Some were far more prominent and became much more helpful throughout the work. But I had states of mind that sometimes just existed for a second, just trying to, I always felt like my head was spinning, trying to figure out how are we going to handle this situation, right? And all those states sort of came out in therapy. But
Mm,
as the states became known to Dr. Siegel, then to me and to each other, they would diminish. It's like I'd have like 20 little children, little girls terrified. And as they got to know each other, and the older parts of the
mm.
system got to know them, they got reduced to one little girl, and
Wow.
that's how the work unfolded. And as the states of mind story got to be known, and I got to know my story, um, the protective memory barriers, which is essential about DID, right? That's no state of mind knows what the other state of mind knows, right? And that's,
Mm.
to me, that's truly what DID is, in my opinion. And as those dissolve, right, then I know everything. They were protecting me from knowing all of that. And once I got to know everything, I stopped dissociating. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm I'm having a really honest reaction to this.
Oh,
So
wow.
interesting.
Wow. Wow. You
Wow.
okay?
Oh, I'm totally, yeah.
Okay.
And I've had really big responses on the podcast before, and I don't mind
Okay.
sharing because I think honestly this is why I
Eh,
do this. But
That's
like,
right. Yeah.
yeah, I for a long time thought I was sexually abused as a child, had no memories of it. I had a therapist dismiss it at one point, and so I kind of just let it go. And then when I started training in somatic therapy, I had a physical memory.
Wow. Yep.
And then I had a therapist who believed me, and what I've been told, through sort of, her experience of working with sexual abuse survivors and other people that I've worked with, and then also healers, I was told that I dissociated during the abuse so that I don't have those memories. So as you're like, and it's interesting because I've been, I want to know what
Yes.
happened. And I keep getting told by my guides or whoever that it's like, it wouldn't help you to know, but I still have this fantasy that it would help me to know.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. I know when I'm about to hit something around the sexual abuse because I do dissociate, and that's not my typical adaptation.
Right.
I I usually have different responses with
Right.
different things, but that's one. So I'm just, yeah, I just want to know more.
Well, so I can just say how it works for me.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I now know everything that happened. Well, there may be things I don't remember, but it's
Mhm.
not dissociation that's keeping me from knowing it, right?
Mm.
The real difference for me is I don't feel it anymore, right? So when
Mm.
I first went to see Dr. Siegel, it was because I was having first it started with just this overbearing feeling of terror.
Mm.
And my life honestly at that time was perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was
Yeah.
nothing to be afraid of at all. And I had this
Yeah.
beautiful little boy, and then I started being afraid that there was something wrong with him. And then when I started in therapy pretty quickly, I started getting physical sensations with no explanation. So I felt often, I mean, a lot, in an intrusive way, that I was being sexually molested or fondled. And I had a sensation that to hide, so that because I was in a room with a bunch of people and no one could know what was
Mm.
happening, right? And that's kind of how it started to unfold for me. And of course, the abuse turned out to be quite horrible. And so as I was feeling these things, I still didn't understand what they were at all. I
Mhm.
thought I was crazy, right?
Right. Right.
And then one day, pretty early on in therapy, like probably the first couple of weeks, maybe even the first week, I asked him, Dr. Siegel, how how can I have all these intrusive kind of horrible feelings, which I couldn't really describe to him, right? They were just so uh, prohibitive. And he said, but how could I have all these feelings but have no memory of why I have them? And he
Mm.
explained to me about explicit memory. And it was a pivotal moment in therapy. And it's one of the first things I teach my own clients
Mm.
for just about any situation. So the way he described it to me is this: the brain encodes memory two ways, explicitly and implicitly. And when I retrieve an explicit memory, it comes with a tag that says I'm remembering something from the past,
Yeah.
just full stop. But when I retrieve an implicit memory, I don't know it's coming from the past. The memory, the feeling, the sensation, the mental model, the priming, whatever it is fully in conscious awareness.
Right.
But that it's from my history is not.
Right.
So it's very disturbing. But once he told me that, then it became less disturbing to have the memories
Mm-hmm.
because I realized that those were the memories of my childhood.
Mm.
Right.
Wow.
And that's when things started to make sense to me. And I was able to know I wasn't crazy. And it was significant to me, really significant to me. Yeah.
And then what unfolded after that as you started to put those pieces together?
Yeah. Well, so, and that's okay. So, and that's when the different states of mind would come forward. And a lot
Mm.
of them, of course, I call him Dr. Siegel when he was my therapist. I call him Dan now, and I interchange it, right?
Yeah.
He got to know many of the states before I did because I wasn't present for them, right? I mean, obviously I was physically
Mm.
there, but they were not in my awareness.
Mm.
And how we talked about it later, he would never tell me what had happened. I mean, he would say, I had a conversation. I want to encourage you, Sally, to look internally and see if you can't find it, because he
Mm.
was building relationships with the different states, and sort of
Mm.
like a HIPAA rule, right?
Oh my
He
god.
wasn't going to break
Wow.
confidence with them because he needed them to help
Oh,
figure out what
shit.
the story was, so that I could then join this whole process. So a state of mind would come out to talk to him, and I could listen, and I could leave if I needed to. I could disappear. I didn't have to hear it if I didn't want to. And it took a long time, to your point, before I could be present to hear any of the details of the sexual abuse.
Mm.
And then once I did, how I think now about the sexual abuse in my life, as a very young child, is I think more about how my different states protected me than I do about what my family was doing to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Right.
very protective, and it's just my history now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I'm thinking sort of like the clinical process of
Mhm.
this and how it's a different entry point but similar work to, somatic work or what it gets to the same thing at the end
Yes.
of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way he worked was embraced all of those things, even though they all didn't have those names yet. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Or at least I
Right.
didn't know about them as separate from just the work we were doing. Yeah.
Right. Right. And you now say you feel like you're healed from DID.
100%. I mean, I started working with Dr. Siegel, Dan, in 1991.
Mm.
By 2001, our work was done. I was finished with school, and I became his student. Um, and I'll just tell you, so when I was in DC for the symposium, I was born in DC, and the first 7 years of my life, I lived in the suburbs
Oh, wow.
of DC in Silver Spring. And and when I was there, I wanted to go to the house that I had lived in, and I wanted to trace my steps because I used to walk to school, kindergarten, first and second grade. I just wanted to take that walk. And when I
Wow.
told people I was going to do that, people were like, Do you need someone to go with you? I mean, oh my God. And it's no, I don't. I wasn't going to confront anything. I was going to sort of feel the joy of me now being able to know
Wow.
what happened, and remembering me as a little girl walking to school and looking forward to being in school, and just the joy. And then, of course, thinking about my future, which was in a few days presenting in a workshop with Dr. Siegel, the work we had done. So it was like a real full circle moment in
Mm.
so many ways, but full of joy, no dissociating, no fear. Yeah.
That's so incredible.
Yeah.
And it's probably news to a lot of people that this is a disorder that can be quote unquote cure. I don't know if cure is the right word, but
I use that word sometimes. I know we don't use that word in our field, but it's
Mhm.
kind of what I have to say sometimes because a lot of people don't understand what I'm saying. And I also know that there are many people, really active, incredibly productive, important people important work, people that are doing important work that have DID, who have internal systems that they manage with great clarity and groundedness. And so I'm not saying that everybody should integrate in the way that I have, but this
Mm-hmm.
is what happened for me. And it was a real natural unfolding. Dr. Siegel never said, well, we need to integrate, or it was
Right.
integration. He created a field or developed a field called interpersonal neurobiology. One of the most important things in interpersonal neurobiology is integration, no matter what's going on, right? Integration between a couple, within a human, within a company, within a government, right? If only, right? And
Right.
and what integration is the linkage of differentiated parts,
Yeah.
right? So people say, do you have parts still? I said, no, I don't. But what I have completely retained is the wisdom of everything that happened to me as a kid that's created this person that I am today, that I feel like I have sort of this bring it on attitude, that I feel pretty grounded. I mean, I'm not saying I don't get upset or don't have bad days, but
Right.
I don't dissociate. I don't get triggered. And I'm really, really thankful that this is how it turned out for me. But it was a natural outcome of therapy through an interpersonal neurobiology lens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's so yeah, there's like so many different places I could go with this because and I, you don't know me very well, but generally I relate to things by like pulling on my own experience. And I'm
Yeah.
sort of thinking about like what has been healing for me in the therapy process. So NARM is my primary therapy
Right, right, right.
modality, neuroaffective relational model. And what helped me was recognizing how, again, like the protective adaptation, like, self-hatred or shame
Yeah.
or self-blame or depression or anxiety or suicidal ideation, like recognizing how in the present moment that's just a residual of my childhood trauma, the developmental trauma,
Yeah.
relational trauma, and then recognizing that I had more choices
Yes.
in the now. And then I had a couple mystical experiences that sort of helped me
I love that.
integrate, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, I'm curious, like, what you relate to in terms of shame and, like, the way that you would treat yourself and thinking that you were crazy.
Yeah. So I can remember, and I write about it in the book, there was a very specific session where I'd only known about 2 states. I mean, I knew there were more because I knew Dan was working all the time, right?
Mhm,
But I had only really taken in 2.
mhm,
And in this one particular session, 3 or 4 other states sort of wanted to make themselves known to me, and it would really
mm,
shook me up, right?
mm.
And I could feel internally that it was like there was a war, and that I was
No.
not going to be able to keep this quiet very long, that states wanted to work a lot of states wanted to be known and work this through.
Wow.
And so when towards the end of the session, when was able to be more grounded and talk to him, I couldn't look at him, and I didn't want him to see me. So I just had this big
Mm.
pillow in front of I hope this is answering what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I had this big pillow in front of my face. You're sort of like a little kid, if they can't see you, peekaboo, if they can't see
Yeah.
you, they don't know you
You
can see
don't exist.
them. Right. So I had this big pillow, and we were getting towards the end of the session, and he was saying, "Maybe we need to start to kind of wrap up." And I said, "Oh, I can't. I just need to I don't want you to see me. I'm having a really hard time." And he said, "Well, what's going on?" I said, I can't tell you what's going on. Um, I'm thinking about something, and I don't want you to know this about me. And
Mm,
I I just hate this feeling that I'm feeling. And he said, "Well, can you tell me what the I said, "No, I cannot tell you what the feeling is." And he said, "Well, could you just sit with the feeling?" And he explained to me about I don't know if this is the first time he explained it, but I'll explain the window of tolerance, to widen my window of tolerance for this
right,
feeling. And he said,
right.
if you could just kind of sit with it for even a few seconds, that will help to widen your
Yep.
ability to feel this feeling, right? And I said, okay. So I said, okay, I can do that. So I just sat there for a little bit. And then he asked me again if I could tell him a little bit more about it. And I said I couldn't. And there was a word that I wanted to share with him, but I couldn't say it to him.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I mean, I was really frozen. And he said, well, if you can't say it to me, could you write it for me? And I said, would that sort of be like me sitting with widening my window of tolerance? He said, I think it might. So he gave me a piece of paper and a pen. I still got, I must have put the pillow down, but I don't want him to see me. And I write it.
Right.
And I handed it to him and he asked me if he could look at it. And I said, yes. And I sort of peeked and could see that he looked at it. And then he just asked me, what was it that made it so hard for me to say this word to him? And I just said, because I hate that word. I hate myself. I hate my body. And then I said, I just can't do this. He said, well, first he explained, he said, Sally, he said, it sounds like maybe what you're talking about is, he said, does it make you feel like you're in danger, in trouble? I said, no. I said, it's just that I hate myself. He said, is it shame? And I thought, I had never really thought about shame. And he explained to me that shame is a feeling, not that I've done something bad, but that I am bad.
You are bad.
And that was exactly what I was feeling. I said, yes, I think that's what it is. And I said, Dr. Siegel, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm strong enough. I don't think I can do any of this. I said, what happens if I'm just not up to it? What if I can't know this, all this? And he said, Sally, I said, it feels catastrophic. He said, Sally, it was catastrophic. It was so catastrophic as a little girl that your mind fragmented to protect you. And he said, but Sally, you've survived it. You've already survived it. And I had never really thought about it like that. The feeling was that this was going to happen and it was going to be real,
Right.
and I was in danger. And that also, it didn't make everything easy, but it helped me let down one more wall that I could be open to what these states of mind had been holding for me. And now I was in a position that I could know it so that we could all feel better. Yeah.
It's just touching me so much because it's it's just making me remember certain periods of my healing journey where it just it felt like I can't survive this.
No.
And I'm
which is an implicit memory of being 4 years old and having this done.
Right.
But now as a 37-year-old woman in Dan Siegel's office, safe, totally safe.
I think I was 4 too.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. And
and we forget that, right? Sometimes Dan would say, when you go home today, I want you to take a real close look at your son.
Right.
And that's how little you were when this happened to you. You weren't grown up, Sally. Yeah.
Right. And I'm really tuning into the joy that you have right now, and also recognizing like how grateful I am for where I am now versus where I was 5 or 6 years ago, in a place where I didn't have the capacity to tolerate. And now, I'm just so moved.
Well, it's huge, isn't it? It's huge.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things for me that I personally did not run into, but I see happening all the time, especially since I've written this book and people are reaching out to me, is that you had a therapist that didn't believe you.
Yeah.
So I just can't even imagine the way this all came about was Dan, during the pandemic, Dan was doing a bunch of webinars, right? And I was taking them all. And none of them were about dissociation or disorganized attachment, but it kept coming up. And so I actually sent him a text and I was just like gobsmacked at how little therapists who were all this whole thing was for therapists, and they didn't understand DID as I understood it, right? And how I experienced it. And I texted him during the session and I said, I'm so glad you were my therapist. And then he asked the group if they would be interested in him doing a course on it. And everyone said yes. And then I said, I would love to be a part of that course. And that's kind of how this started to unfold for me. But I've had people reach out to me who've said that either they either have DID and this came from their therapist, or they are a therapist, especially therapists in training, and their supervisors have said that you may not interact with the dissociated states in session. And that just makes no sense to me.
Right.
I don't understand. I just don't understand it, and it's such a misunderstanding about what DID is and what the purpose of the states are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and honestly, to be fair to that therapist, at that point in my life, I had just gotten married, I think. Yeah. My husband, I always say my husband was the first person who unconditionally loved me. So he
Mm,
created, I'm just like
yes.
so tearful today. This is just
Yeah.
so moving to me. But,
My husband was too. And what brought
Sally.
it up for me was rescuing my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So he unconditionally loved me, and I think
Mhm.
if I hadn't met him, I might have gone down. I was on my way to borderline personality disorder,
I think
and
if I hadn't have met Paul, I think my whole story would have been different. Yeah.
right, right, yeah, and I working with this therapist, I think too. I always say that when I was in graduate school was the first time I really allowed therapy to work with me
Yeah.
because I wasn't honest
Yeah.
before because I was too ashamed
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
completely honest.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm so I'm this is just really I think this is really profound. I'm just really excited we're getting to have
Yes.
this conversation.
Yes.
And because I was so histrionic and had a lot of borderline traits, I
Yeah.
think the therapist was really trying to help emotional containment. And
Okay.
I would guess that if I were in her shoes, it maybe felt a little more histrionic that I was
Yeah.
saying I thought I was sexually abused, and she said something about like, "Well, we know recovered memories aren't a thing," and, the whole satanic panic thing. So, I wanna I've actually thought about reaching out to her later and just saying like, "Hey, I wanna let you know that this impacted me," and, but
Yeah.
now I know it's true because I completely believe myself now,
Yeah.
even though I still don't have the memories.
But it's helped you make sense of you
Yeah,
in making sense is a sort of a term within interpersonal neurobiology, which also helped me so much because making sense was never about understanding why my family was the way they were. It's about understanding the impact that that had on me. And once you kind of
right,
understand why you feel shame, why you feel
right,
self-hatred, and understand that it's not accurate, right?
right,
Then it's so illuminating and liberating, and that's just, I mean, incredible.
right, right. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I think the past couple years after I do you want me to tell you the mystical thing that
I'd
happened?
love
Because
to
it's
hear it.
yeah, I
Yes.
did talk about it on the podcast once before, but it's been a minute. So I in 2020, like everything just came to a head, and I put myself into residential treatment because the
Yes.
trauma was just up to here, and I wasn't
Mm.
functioning very well. I felt suicidal and was like, now's the time to go.
Yay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we were doing revisioning therapy. Have you ever heard of revisioning before? It's still so wild to me, and I've never heard of any other place doing it. But the idea was the therapy started working with people who had a missing limb and like phantom limb syndrome, and it
Right.
would be like a mirror box that you would put like your good hand on the outside, and then you would look down and you would see that there were two hands, and it
Yes.
would do something to the brain that would like
Right.
whatever.
I know about this exercise
Okay.
for kids with learning issues. I can't remember
Okay.
these. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so for trauma therapy, essentially, you would draw yourself at different points in your life,
Mm.
and then like hold up the picture to the mirror and say certain things, whatever. And in the picture, it was age 13, and my mom had at age 13 just unilaterally decided I wasn't allowed to call boys. And I had a bunch of male friends. It was just super like
So
restrictive, whatever.
parental. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And very like chaste as my mother was,
Yes.
and I had this profound experience of giving myself autonomy and respect, which
Mm.
was so incredible. And then I was like so elated, and I felt physically different. And then I went right into a somatic experiencing session,
Wow.
and the therapist there, I was like, I'm afraid this is going to go away, and she's like, well,
Um,
let's savor it. And
ah.
then I had a kundalini awakening in the middle of the session.
Wow.
It felt like eels were swimming up and down my spine. Energy was exploding out of me. And then I was high for 8 hours, no drugs. And I went outside after the session because thank God she was like, she gave me the space to have the experience. And she was like, something really big is happening. And she's like, go outside. And I went outside and the birds were singing for me. The trees were blowing in the wind for me. And I knew God's love. Like,
There you
and I'm
go.
not even like stereotypically Christian, but I was like,
No.
all of this has conspired to love me, you
I
know?
I think that's so beautiful, and I completely understand it, and the imagery resonates with me, and some of the things that if you read my book, you'll see a lot of water and dolphins and stuff going on,
Sally, I'm
and,
just go on, sorry.
you
I'm
know,
just, like,
but
profoundly
it's
impacted.
but think about, you know, but think about, I mean, this is why I really think it's so important for people that are doing the work we do before they get to what we're doing are trained better,
Yes.
because first of all, understanding dissociative identity disorder as a brilliant adaptation, not, there's a bit of a push with a movement within the DID community. And I think Jamie's part of it. She wrote a chapter in a book
Yeah,
called
Jamie Marich. Mhm.
yes, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
of dissociative identity response instead of
Mhm.
disorder, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about being broken and needing to be fixed. It's about
Mhm.
needing to be liberated, right?
Yes.
From the constraints of your childhood that whatever it is, that would dissociated parts, whatever, protected you from.
Mhm.
Right?
Exactly.
It is a liberation, the feeling of just and Dan used to always say, I would say, "How am I gonna know when I'm there? How am I gonna know when I'm not afraid, when I what?" And he just said, "Well, I think you're gonna recognize it when you see it, feel it, but
Right.
I think it's gonna have something to do with an instantaneous almost shift in awareness of your energy." And that's what it
Yes.
was. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I just can't believe all of the connections that we have. It's
I know.
funny because I remember at the networker, like, you were like, "We really need to connect."
Yes, that we
You
did,
felt
that's right.
something really
Yes, just at
and
that little c conference, at that little gathering, yes.
right, and now that we're unpacking all of this, I'm
Yes,
again sort of
interesting.
feeling like divine intervention here that you and I
Yes.
were supposed to have this
Yeah.
conversation, connect on this level. I'm just
Right,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
wow,
Wow. And now
wow.
you get to I mean, this is the whole point of the podcast, right? Being someone with wounds who uses those wounds in order to help others.
Yes. When I first started working, I didn't go back to school until my mid-40s, so I didn't really start
Mm.
practicing until my 50s, and I'm 72 now, so it's been a while,
Oh, a
but
very youthful
oh,
72.
thank
Wow.
thank you. That means more than anything.
Yeah.
So when I first started, I didn't feel that working with people with DID was within my scope of practice.
Mhm.
I don't believe that any longer, but then I didn't. And so I didn't, and one of the other reasons I didn't want to work with DID, although I work with families of people with a family member with DID, and I work with a lot of groups. But the reason I didn't want to was because DID was so stigmatized that I didn't feel like I could be open about that I'd had it, right?
Yeah.
I do work a lot. In the beginning, especially, I worked a lot with adoption issues and adoptive families, mostly adoptive parents. And I felt it was really important to let them know I was an adoptive parent. It seemed like a really important part of the therapy.
Mhm.
So what's happened since I've written the book certainly is I've let all my clients know, former clients that when I could get in touch with them and colleagues, because I didn't want anybody walking into a bookstore
Yeah.
and seeing that their therapist or their former therapist had DID and freak out.
Right.
But it has been such a gift. My clients have just been, it's like they think I'm a
I
better
know.
therapist because of it. Do you know what I mean? It's not a bad thing. And that all those years of shame and stigma, just wasted years. Yeah.
Well, we need people with lived experience to
Yes.
do this work. I was just
Yes.
doing supervision for some therapists, and the concept of suicide comes up, and like, what do you
Mhm.
do with that? And I was just thinking, like, you don't know it from the inside. You don't know
Mm-mm.
what that feels like to want to kill yourself, and
Yeah.
what a gift it is that I have that
Yes.
experience and
Yes.
to really meet a person in that depth
That's
rather than
right.
just theoretically knowing what it might be like.
And also just not Not that it's not dangerous, but not being so afraid because you
Yes.
understand the mechanism of it. Absolutely.
Exactly, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because when you're afraid of it, you're not willing to meet a person in that
No, you
yes.
can't. You're just well, you're not able to help that person because you're gonna be protecting yourself and them in a way that's probably not gonna be helpful for them. Might not harm them, but it's not gonna help them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that I mean,
Yeah.
that's literally what I said. I was like, sometimes, especially I know for me, when I was in a suicidal state, care felt threatening, care felt
Yes.
harmful and painful. And
Yeah.
so a therapist wanting to caretake the suicidal ideation out of
Yeah.
you is not
Yes.
gonna cut it.
This is something interesting. I talk about this particular incident, but I don't use the term because I'm not sure Dan told me about it till much later. But there's a with DID, there can be, internal homicide, right?
Oh,
And I
wow.
had a situation where that was happening, and I had to be hospitalized,
Wow.
and I was being hospitalized mostly so we could do that work, right? And I
Wow.
wouldn't have to drive home and be a wife and a mom, right?
Wow.
This is just another revelation I have about DID. It's probably I may be the only person that sees it this way, but even the most scary states of mind that I just was not going to allow to have a voice, I didn't want to know about them, I wasn't going to let them speak, then they would do something like try to kill me to get them known, right?
Right.
And I'm smiling because once I got to know that state of mind, I realized that state of mind was a teenager. And she was done with it all, right?
Yeah.
She just wanted out. She didn't wanna have to have a body that had been damaged. She didn't wanna know about little babies that had had sex with a dad, She was done, and I just saw she's not threatening. She's just a teenager,
Wow.
and the angry little kids were little kids, not they weren't the rageful father that I kind of was equating it with. Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
again, it's this is a simple way to put it, but being able to have compassion for that state,
Yeah.
that younger part of yourself. And
Yes.
I guess maybe this is a question, but I'm going to put it as a statement. Well, no, it's a question. From what I've learned, again, very, very little about DID, it's everyone is on a spectrum and like normal people have parts, right? A part of me that does this, part of me that does
Right.
that. But that DID is sort of the more extreme version of parts. Is that true?
Well, first of all, I don't I okay, I'm just gonna say this might be really controversial. I don't feel like I have parts anymore,
Oh,
right?
okay.
I
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I have different ways of being in the world, but I don't think
Mm,
of them as separate from me.
mhm,
Right? So I can be a podcast guest and have one state of mind,
mhm,
and then I can go play with my dogs when we're done,
mhm.
and I can yell at the pollen because I'm mad at it because it's making me feel sick.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that they're separate. I feel they're linked. I feel I have different. Let me think. Let me
Mm,
put. I feel like I have differentiated ways of being in the world, but they're linked
mm,
and they stay linked.
mhm.
For me, dissociation (DID) was they were disconnected and had memory barriers, so they were
Right. Right. Right.
unknowable.
Between
Right,
each of them. Yeah.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Thank
I know
you.
what you're saying. So I'm not. So dissociation is for me. It just means that the differentiated states of mind have memory barriers to protect the system.
Yeah.
And my sensation is that once those memory barriers disappeared, there was no separation anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It
Thank
feels
you.
fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, before we wrap up, I have to ask you the podcast questions. Are you a healer?
I guess I am. I think I help people heal. I don't know that I'm it's not me alone.
Mhm.
I think it's the synergy that we create together. I know that my therapist helped me heal, but I think it's a combination. I think of therapy as it's a collaborative venture, right? It takes
Yeah.
two. But I think I can promote healing. I think I have the tools to help promote healing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about the
Yeah.
term wounded healer? How does that
I completely I see it as a positive thing though, right? Like you were
Yeah.
saying, the experiences that I had with DID and the healing from it just makes me a better equipped person to help other people figure stuff out. Yeah, make sense of their lives. Yeah.
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 Amazing.
Yeah.
I could keep talking to you, and
Yes.
I hope that we
Yes.
get to talk again because
I hope so too.
I
Yes.
I don't know exactly what's going to unfold next, but I have a feeling you gave me a gift and it's going to bloom in some way.
Yes. Yes. If
Yeah.
you ever have any questions, you can always just, shoot me an email or a text. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's stay in touch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and where can people buy your book and where can they
Yeah.
find you?
So my website is just sallymaslansky.com, and I've got all the links. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's pretty widely available. Also, just to mention also for yourself, in the March, April issue of the Psychotherapy Network or magazine is on dissociation. It's the first one they've ever
Mm,
done.
really?
Yes, and I have an article in it I think it's called Healing from DID Through a Neuroscience Perspective, something like that. But there's,
Amazing.
Janina Fisher has a piece in it, Bethany Brand and Ruth Lanius are interviewed in it. It's a really great issue. So for people that
Amazing.
are more interested in DID,
Amazing.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Had no
you.
idea what we were getting into today. And I'm so great. I'm really grateful that we met and connected like this.
And me too. It was a fateful moment in that little meet and mingle thing at the symposium.
It
I'm very
really
happy.
was. Well,
Yeah,
thank you
excellent.
for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been really a pleasure.